the spectators making their first visit trackside all year. So it's nice to have them here, it really is, and you can see most of them are adhering to social distancing rules as well. So last couple of cars being removed, the green flag lap then will start. There's Tim Docker's TCR Golf, and that VW Golf that competed here at Oulton last year at the start of the season but wasn't eligible for points, but this year it does look as though he is in it for hopefully the full season. There's Henry Neal on those Dunlop wet tyres for him. I'm assuming everyone's gone for wet tyres. I don't think it is anywhere near dry enough yet for slick tyres, but my point is that in 20 minutes time it may well be dry enough, because these wet tyres really do displace a lot of water. There isn't a huge amount of standing water to begin with, so it's very possible that we could have a few drivers running into tyre problems. It's not so much that they wear, they start overheating those blocks on the tyre. If they don't have enough water to move, they start to move around on the surface of the road. That generates excess tyre temperature, and that can really affect the grip that you've got. And these front wheel drive cars, they need all of the front traction they can get, of course. The front wheels powering the car, dragging the car around the track. Once they start to wear out, you get a horrific understeer on turn in and through the exit of the corner. So I believe I've just been passed a message. We are waiting for the last of the cars from the previous race to be pulled out of a barrier somewhere out on the far side of the track, possibly up at Druids. So that's why we are just waiting for having a slight delay to the start, but I think they've managed to I can hear the pit siren going off, so I think that the start countdown has started. Yes, it has the 1 minute board just going out, and it will be a BRSCC minute, so it won't consist of the full 60 seconds, because the 30-second board I can see is already going out. So yeah, they're going to get the cars out onto the track relatively soon. So off they go then. Onto the warm-up lap. Henry Neal leads the field around and weaves the car from side to side to get the temperature into those tyres. Slams on the brakes as well. If you can get those brakes up to working temperature, then that will dissipate heat into the tyres as well. Darrell Wilson's got, Darrell Wilson, sorry, has got the car back out on track. I got definitive clarification from Darrell that it is Darrell, not Darrell. I've been told lots of different versions of how to say his name over the years. It is Darrell Wilson, then former VW Cup racer. He was a pioneer for diesel technology in the VW Racing Cup a few years ago. Had much success with a diesel-powered VW Scirocco. Here's the grid then. Henry Neal on pole position by virtue of winning the first race. Lewis Kent alongside him, then Max Hart and Dan Kirby, with Tim Docker and Darrell Wilson right behind. And that is your Dunlop Touring Car Trophy grid. The race has been shortened, by the way, to 18 minutes. So 18 minutes will be the new duration for this one. The VW Cup grid, Jeff Alden has drawn reverse grid pole. It was a top 6 grid reversal. Andrew Wilmot is second. Mark Wakefield and Liam Griffin returning to the championship. They make up row 2 ahead of the top 2, Josh Coggan and Richard Gill. But then it's Bradley Kent who was on pole for race 1. He's alongside Ollie Brown. Kieran Griffin and Tony Prendergast on row 5 ahead of Paul de Hadre and Will Butler. And then it is further back. There are a couple more rows of the grid, but that is the bulk of the front runners. You can see here the track is definitely getting dry on the racing line. It's going to be interesting this on tyres, isn't it? They'll all be on the wet tyres, but those who look after the tyres better in the early stages are going to have the speed later on. I think they'll all be quite glad to hear that it's been shortened to 18 minutes, this one, because if it was the full 20 minutes, they might have one or two troubles with tyre conservation towards the end. So green flag lap then coming towards its conclusion for the TCT cars. The VWs though, Jeff Alden is not in a hurry to get back to the grid, and why should he be, because he's in this for himself to win the VW Cup. He doesn't really care about the TCT cars out in front. He's going to warm his tyres up as much as he can. And you can see how much further ahead the TCT machines are as they head into Lodge Corner. And Lewis Kent in that beautiful looking Hyundai i30N TCR heads over Deer Leap and is about to line up on the outside of row number 1. So round number 2 then of the Dunlop Touring Car Trophy incorporating TCR UK and the VW Racing Cup just a few moments away. Thank you everyone for joining us from Oulton Park. And as the cars line up on the grid, it is going to be an interesting 18 minutes of action, I reckon, here. Who will get the best start? That's going to be key to who comes out on top in this race, because Henry Neal has got Lewis Kent alongside, and Lewis is a decent starter. And he will want to win this race. He'll be mainly looking to beat the other TCR entrants, I suppose, but if he can beat Henry Neal as well, that would be very useful indeed. Revs then starting to rise, ready to go racing for the second time with the Dunlop Touring Car Trophy incorporating TCR UK and the VW Racing Cup. Ready to go, Henry Neal and Lewis Kent on the front row. Lewis Kent is away better this time, gets a bit of wheel spin in the second phase of the start, but his reaction time was better. Has he been able to beat Henry Neal into the first corner? I think he might have done, yes. Lewis Kent has got the lead away. Henry Neal can't fight back into the right-hander. It's Max Hart in third. He holds on to his grid position. There goes Richard Gilbert, the race 1 winner in the VWs, already making some progress. He's into about third or fourth in class on the run down the hill, but it's Kent that leads the way. Henry Neal second, Max Hart third, Darryl Wilson into fourth from sixth. That's a good start from him, with Dan Kirby in fifth position, and Tim Docker again not off the line all that strongly. Then it is still going to be Jeff Alden that leads in the VWs by the looks of it. The battle on for second place, though. Henry Neal has not got away all that strongly here, and Max Hart will be buoyed by his first podium in his first race earlier on today. Can he now back that up with a second one, maybe even challenge for a race win? Well, he is in a car that we know is capable of winning races, but will he be able to get after Lewis Kent? There is the VW pack, and look at the way that those two green Golfs have got themselves to the sharp end. Second and third place for Coggan and Gilbert. I'm going to assume it's Coggan in front. He started ahead of Gilbert on the grid, but they're all really stacking up behind the race leader Jeff Alden. So that VW Cup part of the race is going to get very lively very quickly. Here they come over the hill, look, scrabbling around, and Jeff Alden doesn't know where to go. He's got cars to the left, cars to the right. It is Richard Gilbert that is second, and into the back of him and gets him sideways. Oh no! Jeff Alden almost rolls over, gets up onto two wheels. He's on the grass, and Josh Coggan comes through. No, Richard Gilbert comes through in the number 2 car to take the lead. It was Coggan that got into the back of Jeff Alden, and poor Jeff Alden falling down the order. Bradley Kent is off the road as well. It has all gone wrong in the VW Cup class. Look at this. Well, this was the end of it. Jeff Alden rejoining, and they were 3 abreast as he did so, and Bradley Kent ends up on the grass. The big foam barrier is in the middle of the road now, and I think Mark Wakefield, no, it might be Andy Wilmot actually has got the class lead. I'm not too sure. We'll find out for you in a moment. The TCT cars have just come through. It is Andy Wilmot that leads the way in the VWs, I can see. They're number 21, but it's Lewis Kent that leads the way. Henry Neal in second, 1.3 seconds further back, with Max Hart third, Darryl Wilson fourth, Dan Kirby fifth, and Tim Docker sixth. Then this is the fight for the lead in the VW Racing Cup, and it is Andy Wilmot that leads the way, with the race 1 winner Richard Gilbert all over him now. In third position is number 34, and that is a car that we haven't mentioned all day long. Brilliant start that, the reverse grid possibly helping a little bit, I suppose, but nonetheless that is an impressive start. It's always nice to see new drivers getting themselves towards the pointy end, and that number 34 car then being piloted by Oliver Brown, who was only 14th on the grid for the first race, but he's really managed to improve. He's up there in a podium place right now, ahead of Josh Coggan. So, deep breath everyone, that was an entertaining opening lap and a half or so. Through Shell comes the field, and side by side for the race lead now. Josh, around the outside goes Richard Gilbert on Andy Wilmot. He's got the inside line for the Britain Chicane, and he has now gone through. So Richard Gilbert gets himself back in front, and can Wilmot fight back? He's going to try as they come over the hill. He gets a good exit from the corner, and then it's Ollie Brown trying to get through as well. 3, 4, 5, 6 of them nose to tail over the hill. Headlight singular on for Richard Gilbert. I was about to say headlights, but only one of them is working. There's Josh Coggan, his teammate, trying to get past Ollie Brown before his teammate escapes up the road. Andy Wilmot's all over the place going through his lops. Gets a wheel on the grass there as he turns out of the corner. Jeff Oulton, I just saw out of my window, trudging down the pit lane, so he's out of the race now, unfortunately. And he had rather a significant impact with that foam stack down at the Hislop chicane. So Richard Gilbert then leads the way. Second place for Wilmot now. Brown in third, and Brown in that team hard car looks really competitive now. Heads out of Druid's corner, tries to get the power down and attack into Lodge, but actually it's Josh Coggan that's attacking him and looks to the inside line there as they hit the apex. Not sure if he was able to make that one work or not over the hill. No, he's still behind, so still fourth place for Coggan, and this will be frustrating him. Out of the window, by the way, I've just seen Dan Kirby coming into the pits, and Dan Kirby, who was on pole position for our first race of the day in the TCT class, unfortunately in the pit lane with some sort of a problem. We didn't see it on the screen, but Dan Kirby is in the pits and looks as though he is out of the race, so that will promote Tim Docker to fifth. I think that's the only difference it makes, though. Dan Kirby was running in fifth position, and Tim Docker right behind him has now been able to go through. So VW Cup cars make their way down into Island Bend, and there is Richard Gilbert going through the quick left-hander. Such a fearsome corner, one of the quickest left-handers in British motorsport, and then into one of the tightest right-handers at Shell. But you can carry quite a bit of speed in there because it is banked. You can keep that momentum up through the corner, and Richard Gilbert trying to do just that. Then it's Liam Griffin, and right behind him Mark Wakefield, who I spoke to between races, and he said that he really felt there was a lot more to come from that car in the second race of the day. And Wakefield looks as though he is making good on his promise, because he is challenging Liam Griffin. He's running in sixth at the moment, but he could move into the top five at any moment. No one really escaping here in the VW Racing Cup part of the race. Lewis Kent is escaping out in front, though, in TCT. He is 2.8 seconds ahead of Henry Neal in second position, who's 1.5 ahead of Max Hart in third, who is 1.8 ahead of Darrell Wilson in fourth. So there's no real change there. I think the big changes are going to come in the second half of the race once tyre wear starts to play a factor. There is Lewis Kent going through Old Hall Corner and heading out of that quick right-hander, 2.9 ahead, because on that lap he was only 0.2 of a second quicker than the second place car, Henry Neal, who set a personal best lap. So Lewis Kent's last lap time was about 0.8 off his best, and yet Henry Neal just set a personal best. So does that mean that Neal is starting to come into his own now, or was it just a bad lap for Lewis? Find out. Lewis Kent was runner-up in the championship in 2019, runner-up in TCT behind Henry Neal, and runner-up in TCR behind James Turkington, two younger relatives of British touring car champions. And Lewis Kent, who himself I'm sure would love to become a British touring car champion in the future, would like to become TCR UK champion first, and he hammers those curbs in the Hyundai. Always does ride the curbs well, that i30M. He heads over Hilltop now, down the hill towards the braking zone at Hislops. Henry Neal in second. There's Max Hart in the distance in third. Now the real question here is going to be what sort of lap times we can get out of Henry Neal here through the second half of the race. If he can look after those tyres, he might be able to challenge the race leader Lewis before the checkered flag. This, though, is Andy Wilmot, who has just lost second position by the looks of it in the VW Cup to Ollie Brown. Ollie Brown has got himself into P2, and Ollie now will set off after Richard Gilbert if he can. The gap was about 1.5 seconds at the start of the lap. We'll see whether or not that is going up or down by the end of it. TCT cars come through. Druids all fairly well spaced out. Max Hart in third position in the Cupra. Car 101, really impressive debut this for the Irish driver by the Maximum Motorsport squad, and that team know how to prepare a TCR car. That is, as I say, I'm pretty sure the car that James Turkington raced to the title last year, and the one that Stuart Lyons himself, the man behind Maximum Motorsport, raced in the championship the year before that. There's Darrell Wilson in fourth. Lap times continuing to get better for Henry Neal, continuing to not get better for Lewis Kent. But Kent, even though he's not on his personal best pace, is still a couple of tenths quicker than Henry Neal. So 3.1 seconds is now the gap between the top two, and then a further 4 seconds back to Max Hart in third. Wilson in 4th position there, and Tim Docker in 5th. And although some drivers are lapping kind of a tenth or so quicker than the driver in front of them, none of these gaps are coming down all that rapidly. So not much likely to change for the time being at the top of the field. In the VW Racing Cup, Richard Gilbert has just a 9/10 of a second advantage over Brown, who is quicker. So the real battle is the one that's developing for the lead of the VW Racing Cup. It looks as though the second place man, Ollie Brown, is catching the race leader Richard Gilbert. That is really, really impressive pace from Ollie, who was, as I say, not a driver we necessarily expected to be competing for race wins, simply because he was a bit of an unknown quantity. But Richard Gilbert, there you can see with Ollie Brown now not all over him, but certainly closer to him than he was earlier on. They're dropping Andy Wilmot, Josh Coggan and Liam Griffin fighting over 3rd. This, though, is the real race now, isn't it, for the race victory in the Volkswagen Racing Cup. We're about to hit, in fact we just have hit the half race distance in this shortened 18-minute race. VW Cup competitors once again putting on a show. It's always been one of the most exciting one-make tin top championships in the country, and it looks as though 2020 is going to be absolutely no different. Josh Coggan there, who finished 2nd in race 1, running in 4th at the moment under pressure from Liam Griffin, but look at the pressure that Josh Coggan's teammate Richard Gilbert is under from Ollie Brown for the race lead. Over Clay Hill, past the water tower, into Druids they will go, and who is going to come out on top in this little battle? It looks as though the writing might be on the wall for Richard Gilbert, but Ollie Brown hasn't found a way through yet. Likewise, Liam Griffin hasn't got past Josh Coggan yet, so no change for now into the braking zone at Lodge, and Richard Gilbert is now starting to have to actively defend. It looks like the wide line into Lodge is going to work there for Ollie Brown, is it? No, can't get the speed over the hill, and so Richard Gilbert hanging on by his fingernails to the race lead here. Side by side for 4th, look in the background, Liam Griffin and Josh Coggan, but Coggan again not letting him through here without a fight. Out of Old Hall Corner then, look at the speed differential here. Ollie Brown is clearly quicker than Richard Gilbert, but he needs to realise that, and realise that he doesn't need to take a big risk here. He can afford to take his time. If he knows he's that much better than Gilbert, then he has to just sort of hang back and hope and assume that the move is going to happen, rather than forcing it, because if you start forcing it, that's when you can get yourself into trouble. Josh Coggan getting away from Liam Griffin again now in 4th and 5th positions. Head into the braking zone at the Shell hairpin. Lead battle, of course, as they start to hold each other up, that's possibly going to bring Andy Wilmot and Josh Coggan and Liam Griffin, and indeed Mark Wakefield, because he's back with them again. It could bring them all back into play, so this could still become a 6-way fight for the lead. Front of the field, by the way, in the TCT element of the race, I feel obliged to tell you that the gap is now coming down. For the first time this race, Henry Neal is quicker than Lewis Kent. It's still 3 seconds though, so we'll stick with this battle for now, because there's about 3 inches between the top 2 drivers in the VW Racing Cup, if that. Richard Gilbert almost getting a bit of a love tap there from behind as he went into the right-hander at Hislops, and again he's almost getting bump drafted up the hill. Side by side behind, look, Liam Griffin going around the outside of Josh Coggan. They make contact. Oh, Liam Griffin is sideways at Clay Hill. That is a really dangerous place to be making contact. Griffin, I think, managed to save that. Here's the, well, we might see a replay, we might see a car in the barriers. I think Griffin, with all of his years of experience, was able to save that slide, but that was just unnecessary contact really at one of the fastest parts of the track. There you go, you see. Well, Griffin left Coggan room, didn't he, really? It was Josh Coggan who just misjudged it, maybe, and got into the back of him. And Liam Griffin he's going backwards. He's almost 180 degrees to the direction of travel, and I think he did spin in the end, because there he is bouncing his way back on the road, but a long way down the order. He's going to be right towards the back, probably out of the top 10 now for the VW Racing Cup, and that's a shame for Liam on his well, welcome back to the championship, Liam. That's the kind of welcome that you get. I'm sure that he might have words with Josh Coggan after the race about that, but he lives to tell the tale, and thankfully no real damage done. Now, as I made the point earlier on, the gap was coming down between Lewis Kent and Henry Neal, albeit only by a tenth or so. It's now going back out again, because on the previous lap Lewis Kent was a full second quicker than Henry. None of the gaps really at the front of the field look likely to come down significantly for now, so again we can continue focusing on the VW Racing Cup and Richard Gilbert and Ollie Brown. Now Brown, you can see the witness mark on the front of his car. He's definitely been in the back of Coggan at least one or two times during this race. He seems to have laid off a bit now. He's just settled back. He knows he's not under as much pressure now from behind because obviously there was a contact between the drivers that were right behind them. So now he's not under pressure. Maybe time to just take a lap or so, cool the tyres off, cool himself off, and build up to another challenge. It's sometimes better to arrive on the tail of the car in front with a bit of momentum rather than just latching onto their rear bumper for lap after lap after lap, because then you just get stuck running at their speed when really you'd rather be going a little bit quicker. But if you can catch them by a few tenths of a second a lap and then immediately pounce, then it is a little bit easier sometimes to make the move stick. Druids. Gilbert gets a bit squirrely on the entry. He's out wide onto the wet side of the road, and this is definitely an opportunity now for Ollie Brown, because Richard Gilbert was slow off Druids corner, has to defend into Lodge corner. So Brown takes the wide line in, cuts back to the late apex, carries so much more speed off the corner. They're almost level, and they're going to make contact. They almost do as they go over Deer's Leap. But it is going to be still Richard Gilbert that hangs on to this advantage. He defended well from his teammate in race one. He's defending even better now from the team hard car of Ollie Brown in the second race. And as they disappeared from shot, they were as though maybe Ollie Brown was setting up for another move. Lewis Kent, though, still unchallenged out in front, 5.5 seconds clear of Henry Neal in second. I knew I'd try and call him Matt at one point today. Max Hart in third, fourth for Darryl Wilson, fifth for Tim Docker. No change in the order there. What is going on, though, in the VWs? I think we're about to find out, because they're heading down the Lakeside Straight. No, it's still Gilbert in front, despite the extra momentum that the second place car, Ollie Brown, was taking through Old Hall about 30 seconds or so ago. What battle this has been between the two of them. Lewis Kent coming through to start what will be his penultimate lap, I think. 2 more laps to go at the end of this one, because we have 2.5 minutes left on the clock, and he's lapping now underneath the 2-minute bracket. These are the quickest laps we've seen so far today. Look at the way that he's running on the wet side of the road, trying to cool those Dunlop wet tyres down. But he can sort of afford to take it easy, can't he? Henry Neal just hasn't had the pace to live with him, whereas in race one, Henry was definitely the quicker of the two. It seems that in the wet, Lewis has the edge. Right, back to the VW Racing Cup part of the race, and it does look as though Ollie Brown has the edge here, but he just can't get the track position. Wherever he wants to go, he's getting a face full of green VW Golf, and well, they're both in Golf, but of course it's the newer shape Golf of Richard Gilbert that already has one race win to his name today, wants to try and get a second if he can. Interestingly, whilst the TCT cars are going quite a bit slower now than they were earlier on, the leading VW drivers are spurring each other on to set actually the fastest laps that they've been running all day. So been that's sometimes the way when you're in a battle like this, you have no choice but to push hard and kind of forget about saving the tyres. So this is a fascinating scrap between the two. It doesn't look like Andy Wilmot's quite got the pace to challenge them right now. Across the line onto what will be their penultimate lap. Lewis Kent, though, is heading down into the Hislop chicane, already half a lap ahead of them. The Block Coin sponsored Hyundai i30M. But Lewis Kent hops over the curb, still pushing hard, as is his style. Doesn't matter how far ahead he is, he will always push. It's going to be, by the looks of it, his third ever race victory in the Dunlop Touring Car Trophy. He won both of the races at Croft last year, and that was really where his championship challenge started, because he didn't race in either of the races at the season opener at Oulton Park. So there was also a mechanical issue in testing. I believe it was some sort of an electrical misfire-y kind of problem, which unfortunately prevented him from running in the rest of the weekend, so he couldn't take part in the 2 races, lost a whole load of points, and that kind of is where his championship was derailed. But it then came well and truly back on track a month or so later at the Croft Circuit up in the northeast. He heads on to the final lap of the race now, though, and Lewis Kent sets the fastest lap of the race, a 1:55.387. Lewis Kent is really trying here, even though he is 9 seconds now clear of Henry Neal in second, third for Max Hart, fourth for Darryl Wilson, and Max Hart is catching Henry Neal actually now. He's still 5 seconds back, but he was nearly a full second quicker on that last lap, so it does look like the NGTC car with a bit more power. Remember that NGTC Civic of Henry Neal, maybe that's chewed up its front tyres a bit more than the TCR cars. Maybe that's something that Bryn Lucas can ask the drivers after the race, whether or not there was a difference there between the NGTC and TCR cars tyre wear wise. In the VW Cup, well, the dynamics changed again there, hasn't it? Because it looks looks like Ollie Brown has dropped back again from Richard Gilbert, almost into the clutches of Andy Wilmot. So far from being able to challenge for the win on this last lap, it looks like maybe Ollie Brown is going to have to settle for a second place. Lewis Kent, though, heads out of the Hislop chicane into Knickerbrook corner. Is he going to set another fastest lap, I wonder, here on the final lap of the race? It's definitely starting to dry up on that racing line. Bear in mind, we've still got 2 more races to go, so I think if it doesn't rain again, it might be a full dry line by the end of the day. That won't matter much to our Dunlop Touring Car Trophy competitors. This is their final lap of competition this weekend, and Lewis Kent has started his season in fine style. Didn't quite win the first race, but he is going to finish in the first position for race 2. He and Henry Neal then are going to be very close together in points as we leave Oulton Park. Across the start-finish line then will come Lewis Kent. It is a win for Hyundai. It's his 3rd victory in his TCT career. Flashes the headlights. He is a dominant victor here at Oulton Park. Henry Neal will come home, I presume, in 2nd, but I think, he's going to fend off Max Hart at the line. Henry Neal in 2nd. Max Hart comes through in 3rd. And Darrell Wilson in 4th position. So great driving there from all of them in tricky conditions. I know they weren't nose to tail throughout that race as we've seen in the past, but they were still really pushing hard. Certainly Lewis Kent. Henry Neal, by the way, setting a personal best lap on the last lap, so maybe he did have tyres left, maybe he just didn't have the speed to match Lewis in that one. Setting up to be a fascinating scrap between those two. And you know, I've always said that a lot is made of grid sizes and number of entries, but when you've got 2 or 3 drivers that are all pretty evenly matched, it doesn't really matter how many cars are on the grid, because you get great racing. And these 2 drivers here are very evenly matched within the VW Racing Cup. It is still absolutely nothing separating Richard Gilbert and Ollie Brown. Brown trying to chase down the JM Racing car, but he's not going to get there, I don't think. Out of Lodge Corner, over the hill once again, and Richard Gilbert is going to be a double race victory for him. He is the early championship leader then in the VW Racing Cup. Ollie Brown, though, with a really good drive there for 2nd place. Andy Wilmot 3rd, Mark Wakefield 4th, and Josh Coggan in 5th, who survived that skirmish he had with Liam Griffin. It is Liam brother Kieran who comes home actually 6th in class. Tony Prendergast 7th, Bradley Kent will be 8th, Paul de Hadre 9th, and Liam Griffin 10th after that spectacular spin up through the top of Clay Hill. So the field, I think, has more or less cycled through just the last couple of the VWs. Liam Griffin got past Paul de Hadre actually, so he gets 9th place on the last lap, but all of the accolades really go to Lewis Kent. He is your winner in the Dunlop Touring Car Trophy. Henry Neal in 2nd, Max Hart 3rd, Darrell Wilson is 4th, and Tim Docker rounds out the 5 Dunlop Touring Car Trophy finishers. Sadly, we didn't see much of Dan Kirby. He managed the first few laps, but first couple of laps in fact, but then retired into the pit lane. Then the VW Cup cars in behind. That race, of course, was won by Richard Gilbert. That was a much tighter affair, and you know, the top 6 drivers in the VW Cup actually all set personal bests on the last lap, so entertaining stuff amongst the VW entrants, and they were all pushing hard right down to the end. But a very happy Essex and Kent Motorsport squad are gathering, not too close to each other, you'll understand, but they're all gathering down at the end of the pit lane, and they are ready to welcome their driver Lewis Kent back for another race victory in the Dunlop Touring Car Trophy. This is your VW result. Richard Gilbert with the win, Ollie Brown 2nd, Andy Wilmot 3rd, Josh Coggan 4th, Liam Griffin 5th, Mark Wakefield 6th, Kieran Griffin 7th, and Tony Prendergast rounding out the top 8 finishers. So good stuff there in the VWs. In the Touring Car Trophy, it was a little bit more sedate, perhaps a bit more predictable maybe, but the tricky conditions out there, I think definitely tyre wear was on a lot of drivers' minds. The field of Touring Car Trophy drivers did rather spread out by the end of the race. So the field then makes its way into the pit lane. I can see out of my window Lewis Kent is getting out of his Hyundai and is about to hopefully have a chat with Bryn Lucas. Should be there ready and waiting to receive him. And Lewis Kent starting off his season in fine fashion. So in come the top 3 drivers. And with a bit of luck, we will be able to hear from Bryn down in the pit lane. So just waiting, I think, for the drivers to de-helmet, get their face masks on, etc. A few pre-interview the pre-interview routine, as the whole race weekend routine really has changed now. But you know, it's better to deal with changes to the routine than not be here at all. That's for sure. And we're all very grateful to be back at the racetrack once again. Don't forget, 2 more races coming your way today, by the way, as well. The Hyperdrive STXR Challenge is up next, and then we round the day off with the Miltech Civic Cup. So 2 more races to go, and we should get them both in. Actually, I think we're running ahead of time now, dare I say it. Yeah, next race was due to start in about 5 minutes time, so well, we're on time maybe rather than ahead of time, but I'll take that. In fact, we had a couple of red flags and delays earlier on in the day. So the Dunlop Touring Car Trophy then off to a fine start in 2020. And we will watch with interest this battle between Lewis Kent and Henry Neal as the season goes on. And it's going to be a fascinating battle, actually, to see the two different classes, or 2 different types of car, essentially, the NGTC against the TCR. That's a really interesting combination. They do definitely have different strengths and weaknesses. The NGTC cars with their better brakes have a little bit more grip maybe, but the TCR cars, especially that Hyundai, which is known for being very quick in a straight line, they do have good power, and they're able to definitely compete with those cars as they various circuits around the country. Some of them are going to have maybe a slightly stronger chance of taking race victories, but the wet weather conditions here at Oulton Park, I think, throwing a spanner in the works in general, and most of them just grateful really to get the season underway relatively unscathed. I had a couple of moments. Max Hart went off in qualifying earlier on this morning. Darryl Wilson had his moment, of course, at the Island Bend, or Shell Hairpin I should say, in the earlier race. But race 2 passed pretty much instant free in the Touring Car Trophy. The same can't be said for the VWs, where Jeff Oulton really did get a faceful of foam barrier down at the Hislop chicane.
We have an offer already by me. We have an offer already by me.
Well, apologies for any delay in commentary and starting there for a second. We had one or two technical glitches in the system, but we've managed to get things underway with the Hyperdrive STXR Challenge 4 race number 2. And it is William Heslop who leads the way from Mark Robinson in second place, and Greg Spate, who leads Class A, is also in the mix and holding on to third position at the moment. So Mark Robinson looking at Robinson in second place. It's Spate in third, Grimes fourth, Roberts fifth. Again, apologies if we've had any delays in getting things started here. Looks like we've got an issue for one of the slower cars in the field, but Scott Woodward here covering the Hyperdrive STXR Challenge. Again, apologies for any delays or any glitches in the system that's caused us a bit of a late start. But it was from the front row. We had William Heslop and Mark Robinson together, and it was Heslop that led the way through the opening corners, and does so after a lap and a half of racing. He had a 1.8 second advantage by the end of the first lap, and now he's trying to extend that even further. So we're just seeing here Lee Bowron, car number 62. Lee currently running in 10th position as he chases down Alec Townley, one of our newcomers in Class D. They head up over the crest of Hilltop, and Barron's got a slightly better exit. There are the leaders, Heslop from Robinson, then from Greg Spate, who leads Class A, then Justin Roberts from Sam Beckett, Chris Rowlands, he's just ahead of Tony Mumford, the ex-pickup racing racer. Then we've got Lee Bowron and Alec Townley in the mix now, and they too are scrapping. So Bowron has got past Townley. That's the move stuck for 9th position. You see Jason Hennifer in 11th place, 12th place for Paul McHugh. And as for, looks like Chris Jones is back in 17th, so not a good start for him in the opening couple of laps here. And he's trying to pick his way back through the order as much as possible.